Hello and welcome to the Nighthawk Racing #First Championship. I'm Sarah Hawkins, also known as Sarah Hawkey, and I will be your host this evening and one of your co-commentators for this Gran Turismo 7 base championship. Tonight for round 7 we gear up for the penultimate round of the championship, and it's my pleasure to announce I am joined again by motorsport enthusiast, racer and co-commentator Midnight ISO.
Pleasure to be here as always, Sarah, especially for this legendary track for our Lobby 2 group. And it's an event I've been really looking forward to all season since we announced it. And let's get cracking.
Yeah, I hear there's some unpredictable weather on the horizon for some of the drivers tonight. But before we get into that, here's a quick series rundown for the viewers and anybody that's new to the championship and wants just a little bit more info about it. So we are back and better than ever for Season 2 of the Nighthawk Racing First Championship. We have an 8-event championship spanning over 16 race sessions and 8 weeks in total. Lots of different car manufacturers on the grid, over 28 drivers and some great tracks on the calendar. We have 3 official time sessions with a reverse grid sprint race up first, followed by qualifying, and then we'll be treated to an hour race around the famous track of Spa. Okay, Midnight, could you give the viewers a quick overview of the event session formats and point scale, please?
Yes, of course, Sarah. So first up we have our sprint race, which is timed at 15 minutes. The order will be average points scored in reverse, so something to keep everyone guessing a little bit, and it'll be a rolling start, which will swiftly be followed up with a qualifying session timed at 10 minutes. Now, typically in dry races, we have the rule where drivers have to qualify on the same tyre, which they will start the feature race. But if it is wet in either session, we have a lot more open rule on that, which, of course, will lead us straight into the feature race itself, which is a 60-minute timed race this week due to forecast weather being rather damp. So that will also take away the mandatory tyre rule where you have to use 2 different compounds. So over to the points. For qualifying, there are points for the top 3. 3 for first, 2 for second, and 1 for third. The sprint race is 12 points for first, 11 for second, and down all the way to 1 point for 12th. In the feature race, it is somewhat like Formula 1 points, with 25 for first, 22 for second, and then down to 20 for third, and then all the way down to 1 for 14th place. So there's points on for a prize for everyone in this aspect. And we also have a couple of bonus points for the fastest laps in each session. So 1 point bonus for the sprint race and a bonus 2 points for the feature race, Sarah.
Yeah, like you say, points make prizes, points across the board, and I'm sure as we're going into the penultimate race of the season, that points will be crucial for some of the drivers securing their position in the championship standings. But before we move on, we'll show last week's sprint race podium, which saw Deadline coming home in first place, then followed by Hassler in P2 and Simrace Dude in P3. And in the feature race, we then had Deadline coming home in first again, getting a double victory of the week. We then had Ziggy, his first ever Nighthawk podium in P2, and then our very own Big Crazy Bertie in P3. But before we go watch some racing, let's go to the driver overview section of the video where we'll get to see who is on the grid tonight. And welcome to the driver overview section of the video where I get the pleasure to introduce you to the drivers who you'll see on the grid tonight. So to start off with, been waiting to say this all week, but Piper in the Viper is back and ready to hit the track in the Dodge Viper. He is only able to grace us with his presence in the sprint race, but I'm sure he'll be looking to get involved and engage in some of the battles with the other drivers. Piper in the Viper is currently in 24th place with 55 points. Next up, we have Lee. Lee is back racing in the Nighthawk Championship. It's great to see him back on the grid again tonight. I'm sure Lee will be looking to capitalise on the dry conditions in the sprint race. Could we see Lee back on the podium in his first event back? Lee is representing Power Max Racing, who he is the esports manager and team principal for. Next up we have Sharon, and Sharon has been doing a brilliant job over the season so far, although the Ferrari may be a difficult car to handle in the weather conditions which are due tonight, but I'm sure we will see Sharon doing well. Remember, Sharon is a Twitch streamer who regularly streams the races and practice sessions from her point of view, so make sure to check her out on Twitch, Sharon_Fly. Go give her a follow and jump on board with her and experience the race from her point of view. Sharon is currently in 20th place on 97 points, tying with Koulios. Talking about Koulios is back racing again tonight after missing last week's event due to an 18-hour nap. Hopefully he'll be feeling a little bit more energetic this week, which could mean that we might see a classic Koulios masterclass of driving in the rain. We all know that Koulios is a fan of wet weather racing and can be quite competitive despite the difficult driving conditions. Koulios is currently in 19th place with 97 points. Next up, we then have Sophia, and Sophia is back racing tonight in the Renault RS01, and we'll be looking to come back with a bang, scoring maximum points if possible. We all know how fast Sophia is in that Renault, but will the rain slow her down, or will she continue to excel despite the tricky conditions? Sophia is currently in 18th place with 99 points. Next up, we have Yvonne. Yvonne finished P5 and P6 last week around Dragon Trail Seaside, but how will the Beetle fare in the rain? Could we see Yvonne back on the podium again tonight? Don't forget, Yvonne is also the community manager and one of the organisers behind the Inner Esports and Screen to Speed team, so make sure to check them out across all social media platforms and give them a follow. Yvonne is currently in 16th place with 124 points. Next up, we have our very own Big Crazy Bertie, our Lobby 2 host and Nighthawk admin. He's been doing a phenomenal job during the season, both on track and behind the scenes. Bertie finished on the podium last week for the feature race, and I'm sure he'll be looking to do the same again here tonight around Spa. Bertie is currently in 12th place with 159 points. Deadline picked up a double victory around the Dragon Trail Seaside layout last week, nearly picking up a Grand Slam as well, but narrowly misses out because of another driver getting the fastest lap in the sprint race. We all know by now that Deadline is the Welsh Minister of Defence, being able to defend and place that BMW in all the right places, but will he be able to do the same again in the rain tonight? Deadline is in 15th place with 127 points. Next up, we have Simon. Simon driving the RX Vision. This will be Simon's first competitive race around Spa. Another track under his belt, and the more laps Simon is doing, the more confident he's getting and the more speed he's picking up. Although this will be his first competitive race in the rain. So good luck, Simon. Simon is in 22nd place with 78 points. Well, that rounds out the Nighthawk Racing grid for Lobby 2 Race 7, and what a grid we've got yet again tonight. Although we've got tricky weather conditions coming up tonight, but I'm excited to get into the comms box and watch the racing commence. Let's switch back over to the cars on the grid and watch some racing action. As we see Piper getting ready to go over the start-finish straight. He's gearing up for a good start. He's got a lead just behind him, who I'm sure will be looking to get ahead of him straight away. But all drivers getting away nice and clean to start the sprint race off. As you see, all the drivers going around turn 1, all quite close to each other, which should set us up for a good first lap. But currently on board with Deadline. Seems to have dropped the pack a little bit. But Piper and Lee already engaging in a fight. And we have Sophia. So where did that pace from Sophia come from? She winning the slipstream of both Koulios and Sharon there. And managed to get a lot of speed in that Renault.
Yeah, up the outside of Eau Rouge and Radion. It actually came out of nowhere. Clearly taking no prisoners on the opening lap from Sophia there. And as Lee is going for P1 down into Rivage. So Lee capturing the lead very early on in this opening lap, taking it out off Piper. And you're right, Deadline seemed very, very slow. I think he started with the rolling start in the middle of the bus stop chicane, and that's obviously been a bit of a hindrance in this opening lap.
Yeah, obviously we know from we all know from doing daily races or from doing league races around here ourselves that when you start in the bus stop, obviously it does set you on the back foot. But I'm sure you know Deadline, after a double victory last week, will be looking to cut through the pack as quick as he can, and we definitely know he's got the pace to do so.
Yeah, and Sophia already up to P2, taking the place off Piper into Puon, and it's race on already for the lead for Sophia, who was trying to close down the lead very, very quickly. But Sophia choosing the medium tyre to begin with, so clearly planning to go on assault for P1 a bit later on.
Yeah, as we saw, Deadline just making a move on Yvonne, so he's gone up a place himself. Next, he's got Sharon ahead of him on track going into the bus stop chicane. So Deadline already making up some moves as well.
Very deep into the bus stop chicane there, so almost connecting with the back of Sharon, but a couple of drivers getting a bit squirrely coming out of the chicane. That it's one of those high traction zones which can definitely be a bit of a problem, particularly later on tyres. As Kulios goes for a dive into La Source, into turn 1, and gets away with it, but it's definitely, I think he's clattered the barrier and picked up some damage.
Yeah, and it did look like it hampered Piper a little bit coming out of turn 1, so potentially it may be a bit optimistic, but I mean he's got away, but obviously that damage will affect his top end speed on the straights especially.
Yeah, I think he'll lose about 5 miles an hour, which for those in kilometres an hour is about 8 to 10 kilometres, so he'll definitely be hindered pretty badly going down the Camel Straight. Sharon picking up a half-second penalty as well, probably over the top of Radion, but it's so easy to do on this track, as obviously we've driven it many a time, and so have a lot of our drivers and a lot of the viewers, but it is one of those tracks where you can easily pick up a penalty and it will bite you later on.
Yeah, Deadline also making a move into this corner here, getting ahead of Sharon. So yeah, Deadline, he's not afraid to make those moves under the braking zone and manages to be a little bit later on the brakes compared to the drivers around him, which really does help him get some moves done and get closer to that podium.
Yeah, he's definitely been very confident on the brakes all series, and it always sort of pays off for him. He's gone for those soft tyres again, so clearly hoping to have the raw pace throughout this sprint race, which is, of course, just to remind everyone, is 15 minutes long, and around this track with a lot of high-speed corners. The Sharon's just found one of them. Woo! It comes out, unfortunately, backwards from it. But yeah, lots of high-speed corners, which cause a lot of tyre deg around here.
Yeah, especially obviously in these dry conditions, it will eat through a set of tyres. But yeah, I mean I think if the race was any longer, obviously maybe a bit more action from the medium tyres, but obviously the set of softs being the favoured tyre to go on for that speed around Spa. But Deadline getting very wiggly there coming out of the bus stop, but didn't lose any speed through that.
Yeah, he's now making a assault on his United teammate for P4, but Piper getting very leery over the curve from La Source. But here we go, Deadline looking at the pass coming into Eau Rouge. That's a brave move.
That is, not often do we see cars going side by side through that section there.
He chose to think better of it than going side by side through there. I think that was the correct choice. He's now going to get slipstream all the way down the Camel Straight into the next section, so thinking better of it and choosing these moves. But saying that, Piper is fighting him. We're seeing quite a fight between the United lads for P4.
Yeah, it goes to show, they may be teammates, but on track, yeah, they're all fighting against each other and having some good battles. So I'm sure there will be no love lost, and there's a lot of respect there.
Yeah, quite right. And I believe Piper is only joining us for the sprint race this evening. and he'll be definitely wanting to have a good showing. And unfortunately, it looks like he's pulling what we call a ziggy, but he's still on the track. And by a ziggy, I mean being a bit of a high-speed lawnmower as he ran down the AstroTurf for quite a long distance there. But only lost him a little bit of time, but will dirty his tyres. That's going to make him vulnerable to Yvonne in that Yeetle Beetle.
Yeah, and very late on the brakes there. And like you say, Yvonne under the wing of that Dodge Viper onto the outside. Maybe a move for Yvonne. Thinks better of it, but ducks into that inside line, looking for the switchback. And side by side, Piper and Yvonne just in the distance there. We'll join Piper and we'll see the battle commence. As you can see, both going side by side.
Yeah, up to Blanchimont. That's a high-speed flick in the dry, but when you've got your front, when you've got your nose under the rear wing of the car in front, it's really, really tricky for you there. Yvonne just keeping behind Piper for the moment. I think she might be playing a little bit more of a waiting game, because that Viper is a little bit harsher on its tyres, and you've just got to choose your point to pass around this track. They're coming through La Source and heading back. Oh, Piper wide again out of La Source as they're now heading up to Eau Rouge, that famous section of corners, Eau Rouge and Radion. Deadline as well, now going for Koulios, who's still carrying that damage, but Deadline going for P3 as he's picked up a half-second penalty coming over the top of Rouge. Sarah.
Yeah, obviously in the slipstream of Koulios, maybe potentially made him go that little bit wider.
Yeah, it looks like Koulios isn't fighting that one too hard.
Yeah, unfortunately, obviously with that damage, he won't be able to keep up with Deadline, who is running damage-free and quite fast at the moment. So potentially, Koulios knows it's not his fight. But I mean, the pace that Koulios has got, even with that damage, it shows he might be set up for a good feature race.
Quite possibly. Battle for the lead out front. We've got Lee and Sophia going at it around Pouhon. And are absolutely nose to tail. Those medium tyres that Sophia has chosen look like they're holding up way better than Lee's 911 softs.
Yeah, obviously we know that Sophia in that Renault, she's always has good performances. So I'm sure she'll be looking for a win here. But it'll be if Lee will sit on all of those apexes and probably is trying to defend for that victory, so it might be
Sophia really wide at Stavolo, gets up on the curb. That's going to have to lift off the throttle to not get a time penalty there. But that's one of the problems around this track. The track limits are so inviting to make you come over the top of them. And yeah, you can easily pick up a half-second or 1 second penalty. So Sophia choosing the right option, lifting off, and then choosing to fight another day. I fear with the tyre deg, Sophia comes out the bus stop sideways, but with the tyre deg, I can only feel it's a matter of time for Sophia to take P1.
Yeah, obviously got a slight advantage with the medium set of tyres. So yeah, you join the same battle I was watching. Koulios, even with that damage, managed to stay within a second of Deadline. So previously, even carrying that damage, Koulios is super fast around Spa.
Yep, and also Deadline did serve himself a little bit of a penalty, so that would keep them close together. But yes, Koulios is definitely showing his raw speed, and he did say to me before the race that a wet race at Spa, which we're looking forward to the feature, which is quite probably going to be a little bit more damp than this, is an easy way to tempt him onto the track. But out front, here we go. Sophia making another move, heading back up towards the back of that 911, and 10 minutes in, we can definitely see those soft tyres are gonna be down to the canvas by the end of the last lap. It's scheduled to be about 7 laps, so it's going to be a bit of a tight one on the old tyre wear.
100%. Obviously, the softs, they are they do make a lot of drivers go faster, but they also wear out so quickly. The Piper goes very wide. Gets a little bit of AstroTurf, but keeps it in a straight line. But that lets Bertie get a little bit closer to Piper. And Piper does pick up a half-second penalty. and onto the AstroTurf again. Luckily, back on the grey stuff, but does let Bertie through.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate. It came through the speaker corner and just ran a little bit wide. I mean, we know that corner as No Name, we know it's speaker corner, and I'm sure there's some other names for it as well, which is just ironic considering a lot of people know it as No Name. But yeah, that is one of the corners it's very easy to go wide on, as it looks like Sophia's making that move into the bus stop chicane for P1. Side by side, just forces Lee a little bit wide. Lee maintaining the position, just about coming out of the bus stop chicane. Now is tucked down behind Sophia, will hopefully just keep that slipstream and maybe might make a move back down the Kemmel Straight. These two absolutely glued together.
Yeah, it's good to see two drivers battling out for the lead, and obviously we've got Deadline not too far behind, but the top two in a little bit of no man's land, fighting against each other.
Whoa!
But as we see Lee nearly taking flight over that El Rouge and Radion section, but getting himself a 1 second penalty.
I fear that is secured the win for Sophia, but Lee won't give up, and we have to say that corner in both esports and real life has seen a lot of incidents one way or another, and you have to give that corner a lot of respect. Oh! Sophia's dropped it. She dropped it coming out of Malmedy down to Rivage, so she is dropped back a couple of seconds behind Lee. Did not see that coming, so the win is possibly still on for Lee in his return to the Nightcourt Racing F1 RST Championship. What a surprise there.
Yeah, obviously, probably Lee was fearing that 1 second penalty would drop him back behind Sophia and losing quite a lot of time. But
Kulos picking up a few more miles on the grass as well. As Yvonne takes P4.
A little bit of grass kind of action there, and you joined that at the perfect time, I've got to say, midnight. But yeah, obviously Lee won't lose too much time, and like you say, that win might still be on for Lee.
Yeah, he's going to have to, well, he can't serve the penalty any faster than he wants, but he's going to have to get that penalty out of the way and absolutely just focus for the next lap or so. We're going to see Sophia just coming around Staffalo. She's not going to be far behind him, and Lee's tyres are not dead yet, but they're going to be absolutely crying by the end of the next lap, and that gap is going to be coming down rapidly. And also, I have to say, his fuel is not looking pretty either, so he may have to ration a little bit of fuel in this final lap.
Yeah, it's obviously you want to make it across the line, so...
Kulios.
Kulios getting very drifty and going across the grass.
Every time I go on board with him.
It's like me and going on board with you in Lobby 1.
We're not going to talk about
that. If you want to watch that, make sure to go and watch Lobby 1's commentary. And unfortunately, there's a little bit of a commentator's curse with Midnight. I always seem to pick up when he's doing something funny. But
usually not what I want to be doing as well.
Exactly. But nevertheless, all drivers kind of separated on the grid at the moment. Got some distance between themselves and the car in front and behind, which allows them to have a little bit more breathing room. As we see Piper with a half-second penalty. But again, obviously Simon's first race around Spa, and currently damage-free, which is pretty good going.
I would absolutely agree with that. This for somebody who hasn't driven around here, particularly got much mileage, he's doing himself proud. Might just be finishing this lap as well, so we'll just stay with him for the moment, and then we'll go back to have a look at P1. So I believe he'll be finishing just about now. There we go. See, yeah, P9 for our Super Simon, and that's him secured some points. But yeah, back to the front. Sophia absolutely closing down Lee at rate of knots. I mean, it's going to be a move into the bus up chicane if anywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, that's quite a place to get the overtake done. Sometimes you can get it done, you can race side by side, or sometimes it's better to wait for the straight sections on this track. But
she's closing him
Yeah,
down at a rate of knots. You can just feel it. You can see it in the way she's driving. She's setting purple sectors as well. So this may be a move into the final. This may be a lunge. Maybe not be quite close enough. Lee, has he done enough just to hold on? It's going to be all down to traction coming out of the bus stop chicane. Oh, Lee, Sophia's definitely gone a bit wide through there. Definitely maximised her exit. And has finished P2. Lee P1 picks up the win on his return to the series. Deadline picks up P3 with, funny enough, nearly dead front tyres as per normal. Yvonne in the Yeetle Beetle P4. Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, we have Bertie coming home in P5. Just behind we have Koulios carrying quite a lot of damage, but I'm sure he'll be looking forward to the feature race. We have Piper in the Viper in 7th place currently on very minimal fuel. So I'm sure he'll be ecstatic that the start-finish straight is coming up shortly. But just behind Piper we then have Sharon in P8. And then Super Simon is already finished in P9.
Well, that was a fun little sprint race there, Sarah.
That was. And I'm excited to see the feature race.
Yeah, exactly the same. So I think we have to give an award for a couple of the drivers. Sophia for the most sheer entertainment in that race. I might even give that jointly to Koulios. So every time we went on board with him, he was sideways coming through bits of the course you wouldn't normally expect to see a car. So that was absolutely great to see. But yeah, Lee on his return to the series, picking up the sprint win here at Spa in the dry.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll be very happy about that indeed. Obviously, the Porsche, and I'm sure he's got a lot of practice around Spa, so it's good to see him back on his return getting that win.
Exactly that. And before we head across into the feature, I think we should make a note very, very quickly that there's a couple of cars here that not necessarily have an advantage, but with the forecast wet conditions, may very well be somewhat easy to drive in certain conditions. That 911 in the wet has crazy grip from the rear tyres, but also in the dry it will shred them, so it's kind of a give and take with that one. So my hot pick would be keep an eye on Lee, being fair as well. I want to say keep an eye on Yvonne. Always seems to surprise us in that little Beetle.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, she just finished just outside of the podium, but potentially, you know, in the feature race, we could see her finishing even closer to the podium, if not on the podium.
Exactly that. So, off to the qualifying results for the feature race, Sarah.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Like I said earlier, I think there's some unpredictable weather on the horizon, so it's a bit of a surprise for both us and the racers.
Exactly that. And so to the qualifying results. Sophia took a well-earned pole in a very wet qualifying with a 2-minute 30.2. Swiftly followed up by Deadline in the M6 on a 2-minute 30.8, only just about 6 tenths behind. Bertie in a surprise P3 in a 31.9. Yvonne just outside that top 3, missing out on a point on a 32.3. Lee in P5 in that 9.11 with the 2-minute 35.1. Koulios in a disappointing for him 2-minute 35.2, but let's see what he can do in the race itself. Sharon in a 2-minute 40.4, rounded up to the nearest thousandth of a second. And Simon competing in his first wet weather event on GT7, a 2-minute 43.5. Very respectable, but let's see what he can do in the race. Good luck to all of our drivers out there. And so, to the feature race. 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5. And the feature races go. Sophia off the line, commandingly down into La Source.
Yeah, Koulios also gets a very good start as well.
Yeah, it looks like that mid-pack are bunching together through La Source. No particular action so far. That is really good. Good clean racing so far from everyone. But Sophia driving away at the front, followed by Lee, who's shot up a bunch of places.
Sorry to
Deadline
interrupt.
P3.
Koulios and Bertie were attempting to go side by side into Rouge and Radion, but Bertie, thinking better of it and backing out of it.
Yeah, quite right. Quite a good idea, especially in these conditions where these conditions are really low visibility and really low grip at the same time. And it looks like a lot of drivers on the intermediate tyres. Deadline has gone for the wet and goes for the move up to P2 at the end of the Camel Straight. But Lee's fighting back on the inside, which then becomes the outside for the next corner. Deadline, he will get the move done. It looks like he's up to P2. Lee coming back at him down, heading towards Rivard. Great bit of driving from those pair.
Yeah, very clean, and both respectively going for switchbacks on each other. As we can see, Lee getting a little bit more traction compared to Deadline coming out of a few corners. But it looks like these two will be quite close. As we see, Deadline getting very sideways there.
Ooh. Oh, these two do have past history, but everything looks like he's been put behind them, and that was some absolutely beautiful racing from both of them. It does look like Deadline is starting to light up the rear tyres a little bit, trying to find more grip than what he's got available to him, and Koulios is coming at him, heading towards the middle sector.
Yeah, one thing that we've got to say about Koulios is a fan of driving in the wet, and usually, correct me if I'm wrong, has some pretty good performances driving in the wet.
I can absolutely agree that I can attest to the fact driving with him on ACC around Nürburgring, every time I thought I was going to pull away, he not only kept with me but went faster. So yeah, he does love a little bit of the wet racing. Deadline slithering around on the straight. Wow, the grip, there's not much grip out there, even on those intermediate tyres.
You can definitely tell he's driving a BMW, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Agreed. I think I got it wrong. Lee is on the wet tyres, Deadline is on the inters. You can definitely see him suffering coming through Blanchimont there. But Sophia out front, looks like she's getting away, and yeah, Deadline in that BMW definitely driving it like a BMW.
Yeah, as obviously we see that the weather indicator or the marker, as we say, on the left hand side, it's on that crossover between inters or wet, so it's whatever driver, like whichever tyre the driver feels more comfortable on. But it shows obviously that the inters, they're not fully ready for the track. I was just on board with Koulios, had to grip my teeth a little bit because I thought Deadline wasn't going to make that corner and Koulios was going to go into the side of him. But yeah, a few drivers, looking for more grip on those wet tyres, but some drivers on the intermediates looking for speed. So it's a battle of kind of who can keep it on the track and which tyre is a little bit better in these conditions.
Quite right, absolutely agree with you on that. As Yvonne looks like she's making a move on Bertie down the Camel Straight, came off the top of Radion much quicker than Bertie. Both look like they're having a lot of fun out there at the moment, and it's definitely worth saying on this track with these conditions it is nothing but nail biting, and I couldn't agree more. We're at that point where we're on the sort of changeover between a mandatory wet tyre and intermediates, and it's definitely sort of on the cusp of heading towards, well, it's still full wets, at the very least intermediates are making it round at the moment, but we're definitely heading more towards what might be considered in an intermediate range, at least for pure pace.
Oh, 100%. And the drivers will be wary of the grass and the Astro plus the curbs. Obviously you don't want to take too much curbs as it will unsettle the car quite a bit. And,
we just saw from Deadline.
Yeah, that was perfectly timed. But yeah, as soon as you go across that white line onto any sort of curbs, it does unsettle the car and makes it unpredictable. And I think that's, a lot of the drivers are going to have to deal with the unpredictable characteristics of the car in the wet, as obviously this is the first time that we'll see a lot of drivers driving in the rain this series.
Yep, it is our first race in Nighthawk Racing with any real wet weather. We had a couple of drops at Autopolis in Season 1, Round 2, but even that didn't last more than, a few hundred metres. So this is a completely new thing for our series, and it is definitely giving a big challenge to the drivers. And yeah, nothing but entertaining so far. Every time I go on board a deadline, he's sideways coming out of corners. So brilliant. Oh, as Bertie definitely takes to the runoff coming through Blanchimont, but has got away with it. Hopefully he's lifted off enough and he won't pick up any time penalties. So at the moment, all drivers doing very well. No sign of any incidents or any big damage.
No, just a lot of drifting.
I'm pleasantly surprised. Not through the skill, but this track is really, really tricky, and it's great to see all drivers getting around and, yeah, focusing on the 1 hour timer in this race and just trying to get to the end.
Yeah, obviously drivers having to deal with a few characteristics, such as obviously the spray, which reduces the visibility, also the greasy track conditions, as we see that the rain has let off a little bit here, which as we see,
Julius coming that deadline.
Yeah, a very drifty deadline. Maybe that would be his new nickname, Drifty Deadline. But
Driftline.
But yeah, Driftline. But yeah, Koulios coming at deadline now, and cuts across deadline.
He got it done though. He braked late to the deadline. He did get it done. He took the advantage he's got on those wet tyres at the moment, and just he has a little bit more extra grip than the intermediates, which look like they're struggling to put the power down. But as deadline is trying to come back at Koulios, good battle between these pair.
Yeah, Koulios cutting across the track a little bit too much there.
Obviously, some paint swap in there.
I was going to say definitely some rubbing and trying to close that door as best as he can, but deadline won't be wanting to get onto those curves in the Astro, as it is quite deadly, quite deadly for deadline. Sorry, it's
deadly for
couldn't help
line.
That. Deadly drifty for deadline. Yes.
Yvonne joining the battle as well in P5, right on the back of Koulios now.
Yeah, I was going to say a very good run from so far. Looks like a battle on our hands between these four drivers here, and I wonder if Bertie's had a little bit of a troublesome last lap, because he has lost a position to Sharon, so potentially we might have missed Bertie having a little bit of a bad lap.
It does happen, particularly in these conditions. It only takes you going over a curb slightly too hard, just as we saw in Dragon Trail. If you hit a curb too hard, it launches you, it yeets you, and there's so many more hazards around here, particularly with some grass and AstroTurf, which I remember Mac complaining about in season 1 to no end, but quite rightly. Deadline looking up the inside of Lee into the bus stop. Lee late, it might be well said, closing the door, but at the moment keeping that P2, but bringing Deadline with him, followed by Koulios, followed by Yvonne. Good little battle between these four.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see the battles commence. We've still got quite a lot of races, quite a lot of laps to go. But yeah, I don't know if you agree, but these sort of conditions that we see on track at the moment are the driver's worst nightmare. It's not 100% wet anymore, but it's not dry. It's kind of a bit damp. It's still very greasy, but obviously very drifty for Deadline there, and does pick up half a second penalty. But yeah, these conditions being very treacherous for the drivers, because it's just very greasy. You can't put any too much power down, and it's all about the traction, which sometimes you get and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, quite right. I can liken it to some of our personal work where we're driving around, not to give us any advertising, but around Brands Hatch. You never quite know what the grip is on some of those laps, and you can see a dry line appearing, but you never quite know how much you can put your throttle down. It's Deadline very late on the brakes into Rivage, and muscles his way up the inside. But just to complete the point, you never quite know how much grip you're going to have when you put your foot down and get there. As a Deadline drift line goes wide out of the speaker corner, or no name, and leads back up to P2. But on those now, what will be starting to heat up wet tyres in these conditions, which are heading definitely towards intermediate territory.
Yeah, 100%. As yeah, especially now that it's stopped raining, there is a little bit of a dry line forming, so those wet tyres will be starting to overheat a little bit. But obviously at the moment it's all drivers not wanting to go on the wet line too much. The deadline looks to be a little bit braver still on that wet line on the intermediates, although he does drift very wide onto the AstroTurf there, which does lose him quite a lot of time and puts him back into the grass with Koulios. And with that penalty, Koulios does get in front of deadline, but Yvonne just behind will be looking to make a move on deadline as well.
Well, that is unfortunate for deadline, but he just about keeps ahead of Yvonne. But wow, what can I say? That's it was always unlucky to get yourself a little bit of penalty, which he got over the top of Eau Rouge Radi on the last lap. But I have to say, yeah, losing place to Koulios was unfortunate to him, but he looks like he's going to be coming back at him, and with deadline on those intermediate tyres. I think I just saw Yvonne cooling her tyres on the wet patch. Yeah, it looks like deadline has the more grip than the wet runners at the moment. Saying that, every time he puts his foot down, coming at the source, he's going sideways.
Drifty deadline strikes again.
Certainly does. The one advantage the wet tyres will have is they can definitely run on those curbs with absolutely no problem in these conditions. Because the curbs, they hold the water in the little recesses, and you can use and abuse those curbs as much as you want. And the inters is a little bit more tricky, particularly when it comes to power on, as we can watch from Driftline. That's now the name. That is now his name.
That is now his name. Yeah, it's stuck. Sorry, deadline. But yeah, just looking on board with Koulios and Yvonne, like you say, going on to the wetter line to cool the tyres down, which I've got to say, is very clever and very, it helps the strategy that she's probably got in mind. As just in front, we see Deadline and Lee going at it again, and hopefully, as we see, Lee again going over to the wetter side to cool the tyres down. So, very drifty. Yeah, very drifty, and does send Koulios off wide as well and lose a position to Yvonne. It just goes to show, they're so close together. As soon as anyone makes a mistake, Simon on the mediums.
Yeah, that's ambitious. I was keeping an eye on him. He's gonna. I won't be too surprised if he drops coming out of the pits. Yeah, that was unfortunate. That was ambitious. But if he can get going on the dry bit of track, we're going to follow him up through Eau Rouge. If he can keep it on the black stuff, he might very well have chosen the right tyre.
Yeah, obviously we watched it in Lobby 1 as well. We had McManley, he was the longest runner on the intermediates, and we had, I believe it was, I think it was Hartman that went on the set of softs pretty much straight away. So maybe, Sophia and Simon, you're seeing that it's not due to rain for a little bit, so going on the slick tyres, seeing a dry patch. But yeah, obviously the people on the wet and the intermediates, they'll be looking to extend that gap to the people pitting around them, and in the hope that the undercut doesn't work and they're able to pull off the strategy that they have in mind.
Yeah, well, this is the tricky point in the race, because the pit lane at Spa is not short at all. As you can still see, Sophia is still in the pits as Sharon, who was formerly in P6, comes around the track. And Sophia going to those soft tyres, by the way, and Bertie looks like they might be getting out in front. Nope, Sophia has actually rejoined the track, so she comes out in P5. But you can definitely see some drivers searching for that little bit of wet track, which is IQ 300 moment for our drivers. It's great to see. But unfortunately, going back to Simon, looks like he has had an off at the top of the circuit, probably somewhere around the end of the Camel Straight, and Rivage, because he's carrying some front left damage. So it may have been a lap or half a lap too early for Simon, but we'll see what the other drivers can do. At the moment, we're seeing Deadline, who's still circulating on his intermediates, with Lee just in the background on his wets, Yvonne on the intermediates, and Koulios on the wets as well. So these four drivers still circulating and hoping to push their tyres a little bit further until they need to pit. And hopefully, well, they might, as Lee actually runs wide through Pouham, but hopefully they'll be able to either push them into another wet weather area. But at the moment, it looks like we're heading to dry.
Yeah, there is quite a dry line forming. But like you say, these top 4 especially, trying to find the wet patch to cool those tyres down is not something we say often. You know, drivers trying to find the wetter line out of the two. But obviously, when you're in the wet tyres on a pretty much drying track, it's very difficult to not make the tyres go too hot. You got to try and cool them down as best as you can. We saw that in lobby 1 as well. Quite a few people trying to find either the grass or the wetter line to cool those tyres down. But then it adds obviously the added risk as well of the unpredictability if the curbs are not fully dry yet, or the AstroTurf. You could see the car spinning, but all the drivers, you know, doing well so far, but deciding not to pit for slicks yet, the top 4.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to push a bit further into this race, hoping to see any more of that wet weather. And like you say, yes, they're trying to cool those tyres and stop the thermal degradation and the actual tread depth of the tyre start to run away. But at the moment, Sophia, she is on that soft tyre and she's only just behind them. She's coming down the pit straight now, so hound seat at the moment, Sophia, on those soft tyres. But she definitely got to be careful, stay out of that wet stuff, particularly coming out of La Source, which is probably the trickiest spot on the track, as Sharon has gone to the pits for those wet tyres, leaving Bertie into P6 on the intermediates and still pushing.
Yeah, and like I said, Bertie having quite a tricky first couple of opening laps, but looking to... Oh, we've got a yellow flag.
Oh, we've got Simon off at Rivage.
Unfortunate, potentially maybe getting a few tyres on the curb or on the wet part of the track, which is very easy to do in these sort of conditions. Like I say, these sort of conditions are very, you know, treacherous and a driver's worst nightmare, because you can't find the grip. It's not dry enough to, you know, really push the car or get on the accelerator too early.
Yeah, you've got to be super, super careful. As I'm just watching Lee, every time I see him go on board of him, he's drifting it through a load of the corners. Though that 911 looks like it's struggling on the wet tyres, which are now about to expire. He's going to have to come in at the end of this lap regardless, even if there's weather coming in about 5 minutes' time. He cannot drive with those near dead wet tyres much longer.
No, I think we're definitely going to have to make a I forgot how you say the word.
Conversation, perhaps?
No, we're going to have to make a montage of... I've scrapped the word. We're going to have to leave it in the comments as to what word I was trying to say. But a montage of everyone drifting across the both lobbies.
I think so, and I'll have a montage of my own spins. How about that?
Yeah, obviously, you know, you've got first-hand experience driving in these sort of conditions. You know, how did you feel driving around the wet and the dry and these sort of greasy conditions in the mix of both wet and dry?
Well, I was saying the greasy conditions, it was bloody horrible. It was such a challenge. The hardest thing about it is actually the track drying faster than what you want it to. If you're on those intermediate tyres and it dries nice and slowly, it's not a big problem. You can just keep going, just wait for it to come into a nice zone. But if it's changing rapidly, like we see here, then you want to be on soft tyres really early. Problem is, with that, on the outside of the track, the wet grass and the wet, just the edge of the track is still soaking wet. The line itself may be dry, but if you go an inch or two off that line, you're in the barrier. So it's a horrible set of conditions, but it's challenging and it's also fun at the same time. I know that's a juxtaposition, but that's racing for you, particularly in these conditions. It's fun, but it's horrible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Sophia's been off.
On board. Yeah, I was just on board with Deadline, and it's still on those intermediates, quite worn. He's still setting a purple sector 1, so just goes to show maybe the inters are still the tyre to be on at the moment while the track is drying. But obviously the track evolution not being kind to some people, but you know, on the people that are still on the intermediates. So Lee has recently pitted and gone on to a fresh set of intermediate tyres. So Midnight, the track not quite ready for slicks for Lee.
Do you know what? I'm not sure. I mean, going down the Camel Straight and a few of the corners, like Malmedy, it is dry almost. And I mean, given the choice, I can only presume that it's for a bit of a confidence booster, because if you do go offline, you will be going to a accident. But those intermediates are not going to last. We're seeing wear on those intermediate tyres already after only about 5 or 6 corners. So he's going to be in again in a lap or two.
Yeah, like you say, obviously you might have to go on the wet patch to slightly cool down those intermediate tyres. But yeah, obviously the track evolution is treating some people, nicely with trying them slick tyres, but others going on the intermediates, and the deadline, still setting some fast laps on those intermediate tyres. So it's a game of kind of who can keep it on track with slicks and who needs to go on the intermediates. Such a deadline, you can see, is going on to the wet patch to cool them tyres down, as they are heating up quite a bit. So potentially in the next few laps or so, we might see more people pitting for slick tyres.
Well, as we know with Deadline, just because he's got tyres on the rim doesn't mean he's going to pit. So we'll see what happens there. I think the biggest teller is that Sophia has just set the fastest lap of the race on those softs, even with damage. So the softs are now really coming into the range, and are definitely going to be much faster than worn intermediates.
Oh, 100%. As we can see, obviously, Lee just pitting recently, and the wear on those intermediates already. But yeah, even with damage, Sophia setting the fastest lap goes to show, the track is dry enough now for slicks. Obviously, we know that Simon went on those slicks first, and the pit exit was still a little bit treacherous, but he's still circulating. But as we can see, Deadline's left rear seen better days, shall we say. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's pitting in the next lap or so.
He might be going just a little bit further, trying to get to closer to halfway to make it a very... Oh, yeah, Driftline has done it again. But he might be trying to make it more of a erratic two-stop, so he can go far as possible, try and get into a window maybe where some rain might appear. But more than anything, he might just be trying to limit the time he spends in the pit, so threaten a one-stop, or at the very least make it a too long stint on a two-stop and one short at the end.
Potentially, although, yeah, that rear-wheel drive will not like that minimal rubber on the back. Obviously, he's probably driving slicks now, even on those worn intermediates with basically no grip.
That actually has happened, particularly in the world of F1. I remember one year around Indianapolis, Schumacher was on a wet set of tyres and wore them down to the canvas, and they were almost slick. So it is a tried and tested method, but at the moment you can definitely see Deadline is going for another lap, but he's really suffering with that rear grip. Yvonne has kept her tyre in a much better state, and she's still going around on those inters. So do you know what? Keep an eye on Yvonne at the moment. Let's see what the lap times are. Deadline a 2:32. Yvonne a 2:30, 2 laps in a row. So she's caught him by at least 4 seconds in the last couple of laps. Sophia up to P3 with Koulios pitting. So Sophia closing in, but now she's going 5 seconds a lap faster than Yvonne and 7 faster than Driftline.
As you can see, though, obviously Sophia being very careful not to get on any wet part of the track, because even coming out of La Source, that first corner, she was still, getting on the wet patch, and the car does look very unsettled through that section there. But apart from that section, it seems to be in a world of its own, on those soft tyres, setting fast laps, and the right tyre to be on. And I'm surprised to see what Koulios will come out if he goes on for another set of intermediates, or potentially over to the slicks now.
I would imagine he's going to go for the slicks. He does enjoy a bit of wet weather racing, but now it is slick territory. Lee was definitely borderline with his call on the tyres, but I can understand why he'd go to intermediates. As Koulios comes out, it's intermediates. That is a very interesting call. So he's obviously not feeling it's dry enough as well, Sarah. Interesting.
Yeah, potentially. Obviously taking up a lot of curb there, so maybe the intermediates being helpful through erosion radion. But obviously, similar to Lee, I think he'll experience a lot of tyre wear in the next coming laps. But maybe they're seeing something that we're not. Maybe they're seeing that there's weather on the horizon, hence why deadline's not coming in just yet to change over to slicks.
It could be, yeah. There's a cloud inbound with lots of lovely water for those intermediate tyres. They'll be absolutely laughing. Although I think Deadline is about to push this as far as he can go, as he's definitely being caught by Yvonne. Her rear tyres have gone off now, so I think that pace of Yvonne is going to dissipate. But it is that question: if there's rain incoming, you push the stint as long as possible, wait until you get in that window, go back straight on fresh intermediates. But that's one thing we can't see. We can't see the weather incoming. It just looks very, very grey here at Spa.
We need one of those F1 setups where we can see the weather incoming. But yeah, deadline in. I'm interested to see. Yeah, Yvonne in the lead so far, and I mean, what a race she's having so far. Catching deadline towards the end of his stint there, and doing really well in that beetle. So potentially, if she can keep up this pace, she might be on for a podium here.
Yeah, at the moment, that is an outstanding race from Yvonne. I think the key now is what tyre is Deadline going to go to, and kudos to Yvonne as well for drift up over the top of Eau Rouge and Raidillon. That looked good, but she has definitely saved a lot of fuel in comparison to, say, Deadline. She hasn't even hit the reserve fuel yet, so absolutely outstanding driving so far. And then Sophia, over top of Eau Rouge and Raidillon, I would imagine has picked up a half-second penalty. But considering she's going 6 seconds a lap faster than most people, I think she can get away with that.
Yeah, obviously she'll have to be careful on the going offline, especially. But yeah, I'm surprised that Deadline has also gone to another set of intermediates, so not feeling it's the right call to go on the slicks yet.
It must be seeing some weather inbound, but it definitely looks quite dry from our point of view. But the one benefit of those intermediates is you can definitely use the curbs to your heart's content, and all of the drivers that are on screen at the moment, Lee, Koulias and Deadline, are definitely abusing those curbs. As Lee actually goes fastest in... Oh, never mind. Half spin, those rear tyres have gone off, but he had previously just gone fastest in Sector 1. So those inters, even Warren, have still got some speed. Bertie's in the pits as well. They must be seeing rain.
Oh, Sophia colliding with Yvonne.
Yeah, I saw that from your point of view. That looked interesting. What happened from your point of view, Sarah?
It looked like Sophia wanted to kind of drive through Yvonne a little bit there. Unfortunately, going into the corner, obviously you can't drive through cars in front, but yeah, not quite braking hard enough. As we see the wipers going now, more rain.
Training.
So potentially being on the slick tyres, maybe couldn't brake hard enough, but collides with Yvonne. Picks up, still driving with that damage. So yeah, unfortunately, the two coming together, Yvonne coming in, Sophia coming in as well.
Well, this is clearly what our drivers try and do, get to this wet weather that was inbound, and they've both managed it.
Yeah, obviously this will help the likes of Koulias, Deadline, Lee, who are on those intermediates, although Lee's intermediates does look quite worn and very drifty coming around that section there. Did look quite cool to the start of that drift. But yeah, obviously most drivers on the slicks will have to pit as soon as they can to such as Simon. Our Simon obviously getting stuck out in the rain on those medium tyres. He'll have to crawl back to the pits to not incur any more damage. But yeah, unfortunately some drivers getting caught out by that wet weather, but some, like I say, they saw something that we didn't see, and they pulled the right strategy in the end.
And this is the problem with Spa. If you get caught in the wrong part of the track when it starts to rain on the wrong tyres, you have absolutely no grip. I would not be surprised if we see a spin in a straight line from that RX Vision at this pace. So we're going to stay with him for a moment. Just come around Blanchimont. Sorry for throwing you to the walls on this one, Simon, but it illustrates a very good point. You just have to be on the right tyre at the right time, and with Spa being such a long track, that is sometimes next to impossible. But you tell you what, he's doing a good job of it at the moment, just surviving around the corners as he heads into Blanchamont on those medium tyres in full wet conditions. And you know what, I'm actually really impressed there. He's done very well.
Yeah. Just goes to show, you know, he's trying his best to get it back to the pits as soon as he can. But yeah, Koulios in the net lead at the moment, although he's got Deadline right behind him, who's obviously on a slightly few laps, very wide from Koulios there, but obviously Yvonne and Deadline on fresher intermediates.
Top four really close together. Deadline trying to go all the way around the track to get past Koulios at this point, but he just needs to play the waiting game. He's got a lot more fuel than Koulios. He may even be able to go to the end if it stays this way. You can use a lot less fuel in these conditions in the region of about 20 to 30%. So with a full tank, he may be able to go to the end.
Yeah, and I think obviously that will be playing in Deadline's mind as well.
Top
obviously,
4, look at that.
Yeah, all within the same sector, and the wet weather has brought them all close to each other again. But yeah, it just goes to show, you know, in the wet you can't put the power down too much. You can't accelerate too much. I was on board with Deadline then. He did look like he was going sideways.
Drift line.
But drift line, yeah. Sorry, Deadline. But just goes to show that you can't put the acceleration down too much.
Sophia wide at Anya corner. Got away with it though. It is great seeing these four basically all in the same short straight as they head into Campos and Stavolo. It's half hour in and they're separated by what? 3 or 4 seconds? Great bit of racing from these four. And Lee's only unfortunate. He made the right strategic call, but maybe at the wrong time. Unfortunately, those inters were the right call to go to, but maybe a lap early. You might have got away with it otherwise. But sometimes when you've got to come in, you've got to come in. So it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, wet weather not being kind to Lee there, and coming a little bit later than expected. But Deadline's just made a move on Koulios into the bus stop, or just before the bus stop, shall I correct myself? But yeah, although these four actually, still very close to each other. But it's very, very tricky to overtake in these sort of conditions. It's about who's braver and who's slightly later on the brakes. Obviously, that doesn't always pay out, as Koulios goes for that aggressive inside line into La Source, and nearly coming to blows with Deadline, but that does compromise his exit speed and let Sophia almost breeze past on that outside line.
Yeah, but I'm not going to call it a rookie error, but it's definitely one of those errors where in hindsight, he definitely shouldn't have done. He narrowed that exit for himself and compromised the exit, just as you said. And all that did was slow him down straight up to Eau Rouge. So Sophia definitely playing the smart game there, and that's now on the back of Deadline. Sophia looking so confident in these tricky conditions.
Yeah, and obviously she was one of the ones that went on the slick tyres. So, like I said, you know, she can drive in these sort of conditions, but also she's brave enough to go onto the slicks on a drying track. And you know, I don't think her fastest lap will be beaten anytime soon.
Do you know what? I think that's a distinct possibility.
It depends. We might not get this rain right to the end. We might see the track drying out a little bit, as I don't feel I can see rain anymore. It's gone very misty. And obviously the spray is not helping the drivers, but I believe it has stopped raining.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it. Sophia looks like she is warming up for a pass on the old drift line. Thinking better of it here, but Deadline has definitely gone deep into the corner, gets it back to the apex, and is now doing his best to do his defensive duty, which, as we know, is his A game.
So I was literally about to say, I was thinking the same thing. We all know how defensive Deadline can be, but can he defend in these tricky wet conditions?
Well, we're going to find out very, very quickly, as Sophia looks like she is trying to effect a pass, maybe through the outside of Blanchamont. This would be a pass for the ages. Round the outside. Oh, please no. Oh, thinks better of it. Tucks back in, looking at the bus stop pass. Deadline forcing Sophia to the outside, which will be the inside for the next part of the bus stop. And it's going to be down to traction coming down the pit straight.
Oh, two coming together slightly.
Little bit of rubbing and racing there. This is just allowing Koulios just to sit back and watch these two. He's got the best seat in the house.
Yeah, as Sophia goes wide. Tries to go to that switchback work, but Deadline a little bit slower compared to Sophia coming out of that corner, but just manages to stay in front. But obviously Sophia will be trying to get past. Oh, I thought she was going to go side by side with Deadline into this section here, as Deadline goes very wide, which might incur him a penalty and might let Sophia breeze through.
It does indeed. It doesn't seem to be... Yeah, penalty. There we go, half-second penalty. Which, at least in these conditions, isn't the worst thing in the world. But there you go, from first to third, in the space of a couple of 100 yards.
Yeah, and obviously we know that Yvonne is not far behind this group here, so, you know, can maybe capitalise on Deadline's penalty there.
Quite possibly. At the moment, I think Yvonne is looking good for a podium. The one who's not looking particularly sound at the moment is Koulios, who will definitely have to pit again. The others may, and I stress, may be able to go to the end on that fuel with these conditions. But that said, it looks like it's drying out very fast. We're going to be getting towards slick conditions in a lap or two again. But we did see in the last one, particularly with Deadline, he definitely pushed those intermediate tyres in the first stint as far as possible to ensure getting to either the next wet part of the race or definitely to the slicks. So, well, we'll see. We've got definitely more to worry about.
Oh, Deadline loses it! Deadline crashes!
Ouch! Coming out of who on, that is one of the easiest things to do. Yvonne's got a half-second penalty as well. That's one of the easiest things to do, lose it for a little bit too much on the front or the back end. Will step out. Unfortunately, yeah, it's bitten him, and it's bitten him with a front nose into the barrier. But I don't think he'll be in this lap. I think he'll wait a lap or two until it's definitely drier before even considering changing to softer tyres. That puts Koulios back in the question for a podium.
It does indeed. Obviously, he'll be, like you say, he might have to pit again, probably. He's the most likely driver that will have to pit again, so it might put him out of contention of the podium slightly. But you know, if he can carry on this pace and fight Sophia for first place, you never know. Towards the end, we might see him back up on the podium. But like you say, I'm sure Deadline might try and brave that damage, only front end damage. He might try and brave it out to hold that track position, in the hopes that Koulios does have to pit.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Just a recap of the other drivers. Lee did go to wet tyres in the end, which is going to be serving him well until they start wearing out in a lap or so, because yeah, it's drying out rather rapidly at this point. But those wet tyres will allow him to ride the curbs and definitely extract all the pace that you can find from them. Bertie went back to the intermediates, who is a little bit off the pace today. Looks like he might be a little bit out of sorts, but this is a track where if you're not gelling with the wet conditions, it's very, very hard to find the groove. We're still running a very, very solid P6. Sharon in P7 had a bit of a quiet race, but doing a solid job so far. And Simon in his first wet race, P8, but still getting around, driving without any damage at the moment. And that is well, I can definitely say that's definitely a big bonus at this time for this race.
100%. Like we say, we saw him crawling back into the pits on the medium tyres when we did have that little bit of a downpour, and it is raining again. Yeah, so that might have saved a few of the drivers who were feeling that would have to pit soon. But yeah, a few drivers getting graced by the wet weather again. But going back to Simon, obviously he got caught out on the medium tyres when we did have that first downpour. But he did really well to get back to the pits. That's not an easy task at all when it's raining, to get back on slick tyres into the pits to change. So very, very impressed, and well done for Simon for managing to get back into the pits.
I can speak from experience when driving, and I believe it was the SRF League Season 2. It rained coming through Stavelot. By the time we reached Blanchimont, it was soaking. So just surviving that sector with the wrong tyres is an absolute achievement. And all I can say is I ended up backwards on the grass. So well done to Simon for just managing to get through it. But it looks like we might be shaping up for a move from Deadline on Yvonne, despite the damage.
Yeah, the damage not slowing him down too much. Although, obviously, Kulios back in.
He can't be thinking slicks already, surely.
I don't think he'd be thinking slicks, but I think he'd be thinking about that fuel. Obviously, he knows he can't go right to the end with that fuel, so maybe a strategic pit stop, take on some fuel, maybe take on a fresh set of tyres, or stay on the inters that he was already on.
That... Do you know what? I'm really surprised by that. Pit stop came out of nowhere. He's got enough fuel to go for another few laps. Didn't have any damage. The track is still in those changeable conditions phase. Is he seeing something we haven't? That's baffled me, that one.
Yeah. Taking on quite a lot of fuel as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to go to the end. What tyres has he gone to, though? It's got to be intermediate, surely.
He hasn't changed tyres.
No, you're right. That's an interesting call, then. I very least would have gone for fresh inters. Okay,
Yeah,
fair
with the length of the pit stop, I thought he was going to go into a fresh set of intermediates, but no, choosing better of it, and instead taking on a nearly full tank of fuel.
Well, we know he can go to the end now. The others, not so much. I mean, he would have definitely had to fuel more. Sophia definitely riding the curbs there out of Puon. But he can definitely go to the end. Maybe not on those tyres. He'll definitely have more fuel per se than the drivers in front of him. But, well, sorry, Kulios, caught that. As we catch a 180 out of Malmedy heading down to Rivage. That is not going to help his cause for the podium.
No, and potentially, a slightly wrong call as to not pitting for fresh. Oh, Lee's somewhere picked up some damage on the front end of the suspension. Wonder what happened there. But like you say, we're potentially being on the wets in intermediate or drying out. It may have caused him those wets to overheat a little bit. But yeah, I mean, going back to Kulios, maybe a slightly wrong call to not change tyres there.
Possibly, but he could still go to the end, but he's been carrying that front end damage. I think it's one of those things you can question tyre choices in these conditions all day long. It just depends where you finish. So I think he'd be looking at a top 4 still, but he's definitely going to be ruining that spin. Maybe that choice of tyres. But out front, P2, P3, it looks like Yvonne is starting to make a little bit of a break from Deadline. She looks like she's much more comfortable when it's heading towards slightly slicker conditions on those intermediates. At very least, she'll be extracting full speed from those sets tyres, and now Deadline will definitely be suffering from the front end aero damage.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the Deadline is struggling for that top end speed as well because of that front end damage. So yeah, unfortunate for Deadline. Kulios back in. Looks like he'll be repairing that damage, and potentially maybe it might be to put a fresh set of rubber on, but we won't know just yet. But
will he go for softs? Will he gamble?
I think it might be a bit too early for those set of softs. But I was just keeping on board with this battle as well. We spotted it at the same time. Bertie getting on the back of Lee. And Bertie eyeing up a move on Lee.
Yeah, I feel it's just a matter of time. Lee's going to be starting to suffer with those wet tyres on those rears just going off in the next lap or so. And Kulios, he stayed on inters. He just repaired the damage and went straight out again. Interesting strategy there.
Yeah, I think that definitely puts him out of contention of the podium, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree so. Unless something dramatic happens at the front, we'll keep an eye on the top 3, because Deadline is now closed back in on Yvonne, so these two are yo-yoing about a little bit. But still very, very close together.
Yeah, potentially, there might be a few sectors that Yvonne is slightly stronger than Deadline, and Deadline being in the BMW might have kind of a little bit more traction coming out of a few corners. So yeah, quite closely matched, and potentially eyeing up a a swap around, but I'm sure you know Yvonne will put out on a fight.
Sophia in the pits as well. 2 battles going on for 2nd and 3rd, and 5th and 6th. There's lots of action on track at the moment. Is Sophia going to buck the trend of these intermediates and go to the softs? I feel like she might be.
Oh, I mean, she did last time, so potentially we might see her go on to the slicks. But considering that the watermark there still is, obviously, it's not completely dry yet, so it's if she's going to risk it or not. As we know,
risk it for the biscuit
out
or
the
not?
Pits. It is.
Softs.
She has to take this pit exit very slowly indeed. Ooh. Just going to show you know that coming out of the pits is the most dangerous part on a drying track. But yeah, the first of the runners to go back on the set of softs.
Interesting. That will pay dividends. Probably in a lap or so. You can see Yvonne is definitely cooling her tyres. Deadline choosing not to, and he's now starting to suffer with that tyre wear. But of course he was a lap earlier for the intermediate pit than Yvonne, and would have suffered a lot more tyre degradation in that phase when it was dry. So Deadline has a lot less time on those tyres than Yvonne to play with. And now it's just a question of, do they risk it and then go for those intermediate tyres early, like Sophia has done, who is desperately trying to stay on that dry bit of track. But you can just see how much more pace she's got.
Yeah, obviously we know that. That got very drifty there. But we know that Sophia last time when it dried out, she was the first to go on the softs and the slicks as well. So we know that she can do it, and if she can stay on the dry part of the track, like you say, I think it will play in her favour as we see her breezing past Deadline. Very brave move, making Deadline going back onto the wet part of the track.
Ooh, that was a bit of a nudge there coming out of the chicane, but Sophia has to be careful. She's got a lot more grip than everyone else. But unfortunately, she's ended up in the gravel. I don't know if that was a wise move or not. She elected to go to the outside, to the wet side, with her on the inside, but that is one for the stewards later on.
I think, again, trying to drive through Yvonne, not the best idea when you're in the slicks. You know, obviously Yvonne is on the racing line, and Sophia chose to go onto the wet part of the track, which we all know on slicks is pretty much, not the best idea. So potentially, picking up the damage, because I think, if she waited just a few more corners getting onto the straight, it might be a little bit less dangerous to overtake. But yeah, obviously trying to do it a bit too early.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute possibility. Looking a little bit further back, Bertie has made the pass on Lee, unseen by myself, and they're only a few seconds behind Koulios now with that multiple pit stop, couple of laps. So it looks like the battle for 4th, 5th and 6th is going to hot up, with Bertie catching Koulios. Lee now on dead tyres, so he'll be pitting soon, hopefully for some soft tyres. Yeah, Koulios looks like he might be in for his 3rd pit stop in about 5 laps shortly.
Yeah, not wanting to change tyres, but definitely wanting to repair that damage, as we see both Yvonne and Deadline cooling their tyres.
Sophia looks like she's been stopped a little bit in her tracks with that front end damage. But all she's got to do now is just keep it on the dry stuff. Ooh, and get to the end. She's going to go to the end on that fuel. All she's got to do is, even if she feels like it, pit for some fresh soft tyres and repair the damage. She hasn't got to take on any fuel. Makes a move down Deadline, past Deadline into the speaker corner, or no name, however you want to call it, and now is back up behind Yvonne into Puon. But she's got to be very careful on that dry line, which is very, very minimal at the moment, as Bertie pits as well, as so does Lee.
Yeah, again, a little nudge to Yvonne. Stays behind. Another nudge to Yvonne.
Dive down the inside, and Yvonne does end up going wide into the chicane.
I think that will definitely be one for the stewards to look at afterwards. Again, trying to basically nudge Yvonne off the track.
Well, I would imagine it's less intentional, more eagerness, but I get your point. So, at the end of the day, Sophia up into P1. And so the stewards are going to have a fun with looking at these couple of incidents. Now we definitely look at the track. It's definitely dry, so I think we're going to see Deadline and Yvonne in very, very shortly.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, that marker on the left-hand side, basically indicating there is a slick. Oh,
Bertie.
Oh, it looks like from a recent pit stop that he might have gone over the white lines, which incurred that 3-second penalty.
And very interesting call. Lee, fresh wet tyres.
Yeah.
So we have 3 different sets of tyres out on track at the moment. We have softs, intermediates, and wets. Oh, it looks like Simon's having a bit of an issue coming into the chicane. It's like, yeah, fresh tyres are needed. A little bit of damage on that front right. That will happen around here, particularly in these conditions. I'm surprised Yvonne didn't jump at the chance to go for a fresh set of softs there. But then again, I imagine Yvonne might try and go to the end. She's cooling these tyres all of the time. It's only 8.5 minutes to go. It's about 3, maybe 4 laps. She could get those into to the end.
Potentially. She's still got quite a lot of wear compared to Deadline, who's got, again, very minimal tyres on the rear end on a rear wheel drive. It's going to be drifty Deadline for the last couple of laps. But yeah, I think, if she can keep cooling those tyres down enough, she might get it to the end. She's got plenty of fuel to do so.
Exactly that, and Deadline now becomes drift line again for the second time, with those rear tyres just absolutely losing traction at every single point possible. Yeah, it's going to be a tough call.
On board with Bertie. Bertie does lose it. Unfortunately, obviously, on those soft set of tyres, might have potentially picked up a little bit of water on those slicks, which did send him spinning.
It just proves how difficult it is out there. And then suddenly, Lee's choice of wet tyres isn't looking quite so bad, is it? As he's now closing in on Bertie. Yeah, that's unfortunate from Bertie. It looked like he was on the right tyre, but if you put a wheel on those curves, which are still absolutely laden with water, you're going round.
Yeah, and Bertie decides to come in.
Oh no, that's unfortunate.
Oh,
sorry, Bertie,
no.
we caught that. There's no grip on that pit lane entry. I stayed with him purposely because I could just see there was no grip in there. And that's unfortunately ploughed him into the barrier. So repair that damage and a fresh set of softs to the end for Bertie as Lee runs wide coming out of La Source. Lots going on. Sophia back in the pits in P1 as well. That's interesting.
Potentially repairing the damage. Maybe another set of softs. Just to take it to the end, or like you say, maybe she's spotted something.
Yvonne carries on. It's really opening up strategy-wise now, Sarah.
It is. Obviously, we've only got a few laps left to go, so it's interesting, with these final pit stops. Will they stay on the slicks or will they go to the wets?
Yeah, they're absolutely crawling out of the pits. Bertie about to have a lap put on him by Sophia coming out of the pits. Deadline actually still in the pits at the moment, refueling and probably repairing that damage. But it's great to see all these drivers still together.
Yeah. Oh. Deadline.
Oh, Bertie!
To go on the softs. Oh no!
He's not having a good one in these mixed conditions.
No, unfortunately not.
That BRZ, not enjoying them. That's going to allow Lee free from Bertie's threat of P5. So Lee, he might be able to get those wets to the end as well, but it's going to be a bit touch and go. But with 5 minutes to go, maybe just suffer it. What would you do at this point, Sarah?
Oh, 5 minutes to go. Probably might get 3 laps out. I reckon he can get the wets to the end. It doesn't really make much sense pitting now with only a couple of laps left to go. But if he can cool those tyres as much as he can, then he'll definitely make it to the end. But like we said, some of the drivers, going on the slicks, some like everyone's staying on the intermediates for now. It goes just goes to show, the drivers that like to attack the curbs a little bit more, they're deciding to go on to the wet tyres, or the intermediate tyres, sorry, so they can attack those curbs and have a little bit more confidence doing so.
Yeah, quite right. We saw that in Lobby 1 as well. A lot of drivers choosing to go a lot longer just so they can definitely not worry about dropping a wheel onto the curbs and then ending off in the barrier. Unfortunately, as we saw with Bertie, all you have to do is go over the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. As soon as you touch that curb, you can... Well, there's no... You can't save it. It'll just go. So, unfortunately, with Bertie, it's caught him out on this one, and that might even allow Sharon up into P6. But Koulios extending the track somewhat, but because he was on those intermediate tyres, he got away with it as well.
Yeah, just about got away with it, and obviously came in for quite a few pit stops, but decided not to change the tyres. I don't know if that was the right call or not, but I don't know about you, but the track has gone very foggy and very misty again.
Definitely has. Especially coming down the Kemmel Straight, it's hard to see down the straight and towards Yvonne. However, it doesn't look like it's raining at the moment. It looks like it's the right choice for Yvonne to stay on his inters. But Sophia coming over the top of Eau Rouge and Radion again with another half-second penalty. But clearly way, way faster than Yvonne on those fresh soft tyres. And Bertie's made it round for another pit stop to repair that damage.
Yeah, obviously picking up quite an... Ooh, deadline getting very drifty.
Drift line. It's now a thing.
Yeah, it's nothing. We're sorry, deadline, but that's your new nickname.
I'm not sorry. Sharon up to P6, passing Bertie in the pits as he's repairing that damage and going for a new set of soft tyres.
Yeah, just got Koulios just behind her. So, but on the intermediates, which are quite worn, but obviously Sharon being on the wets as well. So, yeah, it's... Ooh. That was very close by Koulios there, deciding to pass, going through Eau Rouge and Radion on that corner, which we all know is very dangerous. So, I mean, getting it done, but could have chose maybe the straight to pass Sharon, but no, gets it done early on. And yeah, Sharon, still circulating.
Yeah, doing well just to survive in these conditions. Sophia has dived up the inside of Yvonne and taken P1. And I can only feel she's going to be going to set another fastest lap, if absolutely possible. But 2 minute 24 at the moment in mixed conditions. So we'll see if she can get down below the, say, 2 minute 22s. At the moment, story of the day, Yvonne, well, there's only going to be 1 lap left. We've got just under 2 minutes. There's going to be over a 2 minute lap here. So this is the final lap for Yvonne. She's just got to hang on for another lap to stay in P2 and to keep Deadline, who's on those fresh softs, in P3. Looks like a masterclass call for that last non-pit stop for Yvonne.
Yeah. And obviously, I think Sophia as well got minimal fuel, so I think she'll be, happy that the end of the race is at the end of this lap.
Deadline takes the fastest lap. So it's a fight for the fastest lap on the last lap now. That's what you want to see.
Definitely, the definitely Deadline and Sophia risking on the slicks, trying to set a fastest lap. So yeah, obviously goes to show if they stay on the dry line, their lap times are improving massively.
Okay, battle on the track. We're going to see Bertie absolutely flying coming at Sharon for P6. That'll be on the final lap as well. So that's one to keep an eye on at the moment. My eyes on Yvonne. Is she going to absolutely hold on? Deadline's about 10 seconds behind, but probably lapping 10 seconds a lap faster. So this is going to be close.
Yeah, it's going to be very close indeed.
In fact, last lap it was 14 seconds difference. So Yvonne's going to have to start praying coming across towards Blanchimont. But at the moment, I don't think there's any doubt. I think Sophia is going to take the win. With half a lap to go.
Yeah, as we see the Bertie and Sharon fight still going on. Obviously, Sharon on the wets, she's going on to the wetter part of the track to cool those tyres down. Bertie, wanting to stay on the dry part as best as he can. So it's going to be hard for Bertie to pass here unless Sharon goes on to that wet part of the track.
And he chose life there. He backed out of the move over the top of Radion, quite rightly, just to sheer fact didn't want to bump into Sharon, choosing life on that one. Simon has finished the race, and it looks like Sophia's coming round to take the win through the bus stop, Sarah.
Yeah, getting very sideways in doing so. And on my point of view, we just saw Bertie go past Sharon as well.
Lee finishes in P5, just behind Sophia. So, looks like Yvonne's going to hang on to P2. There's Deadline just behind, so it's going to be a matter of about 4 to 5 seconds. Absolutely wonderful call there by Yvonne, stealing P2 right from under the nose of Deadline. But Deadline, a very respectable P3. Will he get the fastest lap? No, that goes to Sophia. So that leaves Koulios out of P4, who is doing a big drift. Of course he is, through the chicanes.
Trying to finish off in style.
And Bertie has stolen the place from Sharon into P6. But with those dead wet tyres against fresh softs, it was just a matter of time, I feel, for Bertie in that one.
Yeah, managed to pass Sharon coming out of the back straight. So yeah, did very well. Obviously on 2 very different tyres. So Bertie wanted to get that move done as soon as he could. But I mean, Sharon on the wet tyres as well. She's been able to manage them and cool them down enough to get them to the end of the race.
Yeah, did a very good job to make those wets go as long as they did. Absolutely. Kudos to all of our drivers today. It's been very, very tricky out there. Koulios picks up P4. Was unfortunately it was in the running for a podium, but P4 I think will do nicely. Good set of solid points in this case, and well deservedly so. There you go. Bertie in P6 after a tricky couple of laps and changeable conditions, but again picks up some solid points. Well done to Bertie there. And Sharon making our way around, our last finisher today, with Simon already finishing, doing a great job, particularly in that 458, which as we know is a bit of a tricky car as well.
100%.
And there we go, Sarah. That is the end of the 1 hour race for round 7, season 2 of Nighthawk Racing F1 RST.
That is, and what a race it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Whew. I think we need to start things off with who do you think was driver of the day?
Ooh, driver of the day. That's tough. I mean, I think I'm gonna give it to. I'm gonna give it to Yvonne.
I'm in full agreement.
I mean, the tyre management especially in the feature race, her tyre management was on another level. She knew she had to cool the tyres down, but it worked out in her favour. She managed to secure P2 by cooling down the tyres when she needed to, obviously attacking and defending when she needs to. So, yeah, I mean, the tyre management from Yvonne, I think, was amazing, to say the least.
Yeah, and that's not to take anything away from our other drivers like Sophia, Deadline, Koulios, Lee, Bertie, Sharon or Simon. But yeah, it looked like Yvonne was on another level with the strategy today. And definitely getting that Beetle, which is not the easiest thing in the world, up to P2, which is a great result, great set of points for her. And yeah, you can only say that is a really great drive. And again, to Sophia, she had a great drive as well into P1 and repeatedly coming from behind to find P1 again. So well done to her as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you just said, I think all drivers across obviously both the sprint and the feature race had a very good event, and it was very enjoyable. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that could be in contention of driver of the day, but yeah, for me in the feature race, I think it's got to go to Yvonne. Yeah, in the sprint, I'm not quite sure. I think all drivers doing remarkably well. Obviously, Lee getting a victory on his first event back, so it's a tough one, but for me, it's Yvonne.
I would agree with that. For the sprint, if we do an individual award for that, I would definitely give it to Lee as well, who absolutely did brilliantly on that one. It's worth saying as well, that is Yvonne's second podium for the feature race. She's done very well in the sprints up until now, but not always quite so well in the feature, but that has definitely changed today with a second podium. And with Sophia, I believe that's her second win as well. Yeah, it's a second win in the features, so definitely showing her class. And with Deadline, that is his fourth podium as well. So, wow, well done to all the drivers there. It's been a great and entertaining race, particularly when we had 4 drivers separated by 2 or 3 seconds. So, I couldn't have wanted much more from this race. We had strategic, we had drama, we had everything really, as well as speed at the end. So, well done to all the drivers out there. And let's have that again at some time. Maybe they might say more rain, less rain, or something to that effect, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. Obviously, the unpredictability of the rain and the pit stops, the strategies. Obviously, the weather does sometimes put a hamper on strategies that people have in mind going into some races. So, yeah, I mean, all drivers did remarkably well. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and like you say, we found some drivers that really do excel in the rain, and I think they'll be asking for it again.
Oh, definitely. But with that in mind, Sarah, I think we've done the drive of the day. We've done the post race chat, as it were. Is there any standout moments from you from this race or the sprint?
Oh, I mean, I've got to another shout out to Yvonne. Tire management, going on to the wet part of the tires to cool the tires down when she needs to, just to get him to the end. But I mean, Deadline again. He's he's shown that very drifty at times, but he's shown that he can really drive that BMW in such tricky conditions. But yeah, I mean, there's standout moments for all of the drivers across both events. We saw a dry sprint race, and then the Belgian weather, kind of like the British weather, decided to pour down in the feature race. So yeah, I mean, all drivers having their own standout moments and their own highlights in a way. So I'm proud of all of the drivers, and I don't think there's one kind of standout moment for me across the board, because I think they all had their own, and I'm sure in a highlight reel post season we'll see quite a few things that we might have missed that the drivers did. But what about yourself? Any standout moments for you?
Just seeing all of the drivers drifting around a set of corners and holding it was quite entertaining. Every time I went on board to Kulios, or Driftline, as he's now known, it was definitely entertaining because we were always sideways around a couple of chicanes and holding it. Unfortunately, a couple of times it does catch you out and bite you, particularly in those changeable conditions. But that said, it was quite entertaining, especially here at Spa, such a legendary track. And well, that's my point of view on it, and that is the round 7, the penultimate round of season 2 championship. So, I guess we look forward now to Le Mans, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm excited for Le Mans, a track that we don't go off to very often, but I'm excited. It's obviously a very historic racing circuit, so yeah, maybe another one in the history books for Nighthawk Racing.
Could well be, and it's only a quick trip from Belgium down to Le Mans, so, well, it's only a week away for us, so let's look forward to that, and I think off to the podium room.
Yeah, let's go hear from the podium room drivers.
And well done to all the drivers. See you all next time.
Nighthawk over and out.
Um, Overall, for me, it was pretty good. Starting out with sprint race which was probably the only outlier because it was a bit quite mundane for me. Uh, as I said, starting more or less in the back, and then driving to a P3. Couldn't really catch the 2 guys ahead, Sophia and Lead. Too quick. They were just too quick for sprint race at the time. So okay, I didn't really have any answer to them. So yeah, that was quite boring for me. Nothing really happened for me there. Then we move on to qualifying. for me, qualifying was quite interesting. So it looked like, I can tell by the rain, it was going to be quite interesting because it rained really heavily in the first part of qualifying. But I knew at about 7 minutes ish, it was gonna be at least Inter's territory. So I wasn't really worrying too much in the first bit of the race, first bit of qualifying even. And yeah, I really started pushing at the end of qualifying, which in the end kind of worked out for me nearly. I only finished second, only 0.5 seconds behind Sophia. So honestly, I couldn't really complain about qualifying. Then the main race has not happened. Starting out quite alright. I wasn't really pushing because again, I didn't want to be leading the pack because I started on inters. So I kind of wanted to make sure that I wasn't really pushing too hard, so that I had people ahead of me that can basically suffer in the rain, whereas I would soak up all of the in the somewhat drier line throughout the race. And it kind of worked out. It nearly worked out. I think starting on the inters was probably a better idea than the rest of the guys ahead of me. So I really had a great advantage. I had a really good race with lead as well. A bit tipsy turvy for me since obviously lead did not hold back defending. And fair play to him. He did a really good job there. I can't really complain about him about there. And yeah, overall it was a very good race for that regard. Until I had an empty daisy. I think about lap. I want to say, I can't remember what lap it was. I think it was either between lap 10 or lap 12, where I hit rode a curb at the exit, put on it too much, hit the barrier quite heavily, lost a bit of a front end aero. So that really hindered me a bit when trying to overtake your fawn at the end, which probably, as I said, at the end, probably ruined my chances of a second place with hindsight now. But I can't really complain. To nearly throw away a podium in that race would have been heartbreaking. But thankfully, I kept up some pace, and I think the rain really helped me because I felt like the rain made me feel a bit quicker than most people out there. So yeah, I can't really complain. I'll take a double podium for this round. Hopefully, I'll be better in the next round, and hopefully Le Mans gives me some luck in the end. We have to wait and see. So yeah, not too bad.
Hello everyone, Ivana Aufla here. The sprint race at Spa Francorchamps. I ended up P4, but I started, I think, P7 or 8. I was too careful in the beginning of the race, the first 3 laps. Lost a bit too much time to catch up P3 in the end. But I'm happy with the P4 as a decent result. But I knew it was all gonna be about the future race. We had from the day before on Tuesday 10 scenarios that could happen in the race involving rain, dry, rain, and more rain. So, yeah, this afternoon I decided not to practice those 10 scenarios because then I'm already done driving before I start in the evening. So I sit with my girlfriend Sophie, who is also racing a lot on Gran Turismo and has way more experience than I have. So we made a strategy, a roughly guess what will be good for each scenario. So I was a bit prepared, kind of. And then we got scenario 10, which was good. It involves a lot of rain, drying up, rain again, drying up. So I thought, okay, am I gonna go wet, soft, or do Inter one stop, go back on the Inter, save a little bit of fuel, and then go to the end? I did the second one. I started on the Inter, so the first lap was a bit tricky with the heavy rain, but then I could save the tires very well, save a bit of fuel, I did a one stop, and in the end, it was enough for P2, which is a great result, and I'm very happy with. And I'm sure the rain saved me with my controller, also with the Beetle, because I know the speed is not as good as some of the other cars that are in, but due to the strategy, it works very well. So yeah, I'm very happy with my results, and I want to thank the organization because this was a very good race, and I know a lot of effort is put in. So thank you to everyone who is involved to organize this series. I also want to thank Sophie because I only did 20 minutes of practice, and my qualifying for the future race was basically the practice for the race. I knew I could survive the inters on full wet track and also in the dry. So that's what I practiced before in those 20 minutes, and that was all. So thanks to her, I had a very good strategy, and it worked out very well. I'll see you all for the last race at Le Mans. I'm looking forward to it. Ciao, ciao.
I've had a really fun time during this race, despite having a few hiccups, whether it was down to strategy or driver error. The rain added a nice twist to the racing to shake things up, and I hope this path of dynamic weather continues throughout the life of the league and develops further into full wet racing or more tracks with wet weather as the game hopefully expands upon this. Appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with the drivers out on track, and will continue to look forward to any events I can attend.
It wasn't going to be easy with the ever-changing wet Scottish flag weather here at Spa, but for the sprint event it managed to stay dry. I was sweating it again on the last lap, as when I crossed the line on the last lap I was at 0.9 in the tank with a hungry Sophia on my gearbox, but with a couple of trim backs we managed it, but only just.